Okay, so let's kind of change the topic a little bit. Gordon was on this, he was going to go to an MMA kick, and he also said he's going to retire from grappling in 2019. Now, he hasn't transitioned to MMA, and he's not retired from grappling. Is that just him being a brash young kid? And I know obviously life changes, right? Life throws strange things at you. Do you foresee those things in the future? Do you foresee him both retiring from grappling and going to MMA still, or you think it's just he's just going to continue grappling and stay on top of his game?
Okay, I'll try to answer both. With the retirement thing, I'm pretty sure that was just Gordon trolling people.
Okay. Because he's young. He's only 25.
And, it would make no sense. With regards to the MMA thing, people are going to hate my guts for saying this. Yeah, I'm doing my best to talk Gordon Ryan out of doing MMA.
Well, but Gary Tonin's doing really well. That's another guy you work with a lot.
But I'll explain myself.
Okay.
You might think this is strange because I actually began my coaching career not in jiu-jitsu but in mixed martial arts. It's my belief that grappling is at a pivotal point in its history. There is a chance that submission grappling could expand to a remarkable degree over the next 10 years.
You mean participation growth in numbers, or
across the board?
Everything.
Participation, spectators, everything.
Okay.
Now, grappling is a weird sport insofar as most of the spectators are themselves participants.
Yep.
But I do believe there is a better chance now than there has been at any other time in submission grappling history that this could make a massive step forward in terms of interest value amongst across the nation and indeed around the world. In order for that to happen, the sport needs superstars.
Absolutely.
It's individuals who start revolutions, and I believe that people like Gordon Ryan, Craig Jones, Gary Tonin, numerous other people from other teams could do something really positive in this direction. If Gordon went to MMA, I feel like that would be lost. My dream is to create a situation 20 years from now where young grapplers don't need to go to MMA to make money because they can make more than enough money in grappling. Where a kid coming out of high school who's an outstanding grappler can realistically look forward to a future where he can be economically solvent for his entire life based upon his grappling career and his teaching career after that. Right now we don't have that. If you look at 99.9% of the grapplers around this country, they're flat broke. And they have no economic...
That's MMA fighters too, though.
But even more so with grappling. I'm not going to mention names, but there's been some sad things, people that I know from grappling who got terrible injuries over the last 3 to 4 years, couldn't even afford to have medical operations, had to basically rely on the generosity of others. And these are ADCC champions. How screwed up is that? Like, you win an ADCC gold medal, you get your ACL blown out, you can't even afford to fix yourself. That's got to change. That's got to change. And
so wrestling would have a parallel, because I mean, myself, Daniel, and Henry all were on the 2000 Olympic team, and I could tell you we were making. I can't tell you what they're making, but it was probably equivalent. You know, as one of the biggest stars of the sport, I was making $30,000 a year, and I didn't want to continue there, and I wanted to have I knew I was going to have a family, and I do now, and so that was one of the main reasons I went to MMA. And now, you know, we're a decade-ish later, and you're seeing very few of the top wrestlers are leaving for mixed martial arts because they can actually make a decent living in the sport of wrestling.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
and I just wish we could do the same thing for grappling. Like Jordan Burroughs makes substantial coin now. Like he's doing very well. He's doing really well. And he was a guy who was one of those pivotal figures who helped make that transformation where around the time you were grappling, it was sad. You know, to think that Daniel Cormier had to do MMA. And you know, he started pretty late. And,
he started really late.
To make money, he had to do it. And God bless him. Starting at the age he did, and he was highly successful. But I would do anything to have a situation where grapplers and wrestlers didn't have to make that choice.
So let me push back on that a little bit. I would have loved to have been able to continue wrestling and know I was going to make a solid salary and I would have a future in it, right? I would have loved to have had that option, and I love that other people can have that option now, right? Jaden Cox, Kyle Snyder, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I kind of enjoy that my sport is well represented in MMA, and I think MMA is like this conglomeration of what works the most, which is one of the things that we enjoyed about it most in '93. We wanted to figure out what actually, and it's one of the what actually works. And so while I love that some of those guys are staying in the sport of wrestling, I also love that some of them, right, Aaron Pico or Justin Gaethje or other, high-level wrestlers, Marty Usman, are going now to MMA to also show that wrestling works still. So would you envision a system where there are, some really high-level grapplers never transitioning and staying in grappling, while some still are going to go represent the sport in mixed martial arts?
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive choices. I'm just as you're incredibly proud of the amazing accomplishments of wrestlers in MMA, I'm always very proud of the accomplishments of jiu-jitsu players and mixed martial arts. I think that there's a certain kind of jiu-jitsu which translates better to mixed martial arts. I think one of the reasons why I believe jiu-jitsu never should lose sight of the appeal of submission holds is because they are such an important part of MMA. Like a lot of the tactics that would win you jiu-jitsu matches don't translate well to mixed martial arts, but submissions always do.
Well, that's what I'm curious, just for my own sake, I don't know, throw Gordon in the cage with John Jones. Can he go submit him? I don't know, maybe he can. I'm not sure. But it's it would be fascinating for me to see how that plays out. I mean, he's probably have a better chance submitting Jan Blachowicz than he would John Jones, but either way, that's right. That's the top of the food chain.
Those are certainly fascinating ideas, but I think that the first responsibility jiu-jitsu has right now is just to create an environment where there can be a choice on the part of athletes across the board, and right now there isn't.
Sure.
And I think people like Gordon, people like Craig Jones and Nicky Ryan coming up through the ranks, and other outstanding athletes outside of our team have got a chance now, a better chance now than any other time in the sport's history to make that elevation to a new level. Now, Gary Tonin passionately wanted to do MMA, and I tried to give him the same spiel, and he was like, "Fuck you, Danaher, I'm doing MMA." So it went that way. Right now, Gordon's going back and forth with me. I know he always dreamed of doing MMA, and I'm not going to stop someone from doing MMA. But I'm just, I'm saying to Gordon right now, listen, you're making far more money doing grappling than you would in mixed martial arts, unless you started winning serious belts. Like how many people can claim this? Very, very few. And I want Gordon's success to translate not just for him, but for grapplers around the world. And if anyone in the grappling community can do that right now, it's Gordon Ryan. So I'm trying hard to encourage him to stay in this area for the sake of grappling.
So with Gordon, you see someone who's, maybe Marcelo Garcia, but probably more proficient with submissions than anyone else, right? Not just winning by points. And so that's, again, lend yourself to, well, could you go lock him in the cage with John Jones, and does he have a decent chance of submitting him without even training anything else? Which then goes back to the early days of MMA, where people didn't cross-train other stuff.
Historically, the lesson is pretty simple. So someone who's well-rounded will almost always dominate someone who's a naive specialist.
But so with Gordon, I would say, right, in MMA, I think you have three, right? You have the striking, the wrestling, and then you have the submissions. And he's not an elite level wrestler, but he wrestles relatively well.
For a jiu-jitsu guy, he wrestles well.
He wrestles well for a jiu-jitsu guy. So, without training any striking, what kind of chance would you give him against some of those better guys of submitting them?
Well, Gordon's kind of like and indeed pretty much anyone off my team or someone who follows and they have an X factor, which is if they get to your legs, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked.
And you could be on top of them, apparently winning the match, and suddenly he spins into your legs and you're done. So that's this huge X factor, which means that they always have a chance. Submissions function in jiu-jitsu the same way a knockout punch functions in boxing. A knockout puncher, no matter how wrecked he is in a fight always has a puncher's chance, and a submission artist always has his chance. As long as you got a heartbeat and you got submission holds, you can win the fight. So even if Gordon Ryan, just as a pure grappler, went into a cage against anyone, you mentioned John Jones, but anyone, he's always going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
As opposed to a more conventional jiu-jitsu player who typically wins by like pulling
Points,
half guard
yeah.
and winning by advantage. Like, he's going to get fucking crushed.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a good strategy.
He just has no.
I mean, you know, one guy who really struggled in MMA, and I think he just, you know, he didn't have immediate success, and then he stopped and went back in jiu-jitsu, was Galvao, you know, who is more, I would say, more traditional. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, probably,
more fundamental, and he, you know, he wins everything almost. But he went MMA, and he did okay, and had some failures, and then never came back and went back to jiu-jitsu.
The fundamental lesson of mixed martial arts is that you got to have something that makes the other guy scared of you.
Yeah.
You got to have something. It might be a heavy punch, it might be a kick, it might be your elbows, it might be your knees, or it might be your submissions. But if you can't make the other guy scared, he's not going to respect you.
Sure.
Like with you, everyone was terrified of your takedowns. People knew that if you got them down, they weren't going to get back up.
Yeah.
And so elite punchers were afraid to tangle with you. The punches they would normally let fly, they wouldn't let fly on you, because they knew if they overcommitted, you were on the legs.
Yeah.
And so you scared people in that way. Damien Meyer, very similar.
Yeah.
But you have to have some way of doing it. Toquinho was a guy who scared the shit out of people with legs, and someone like Gordon or Gary can do the same kind of thing. But as long as you have some method of making the other guy scared of you, they'll show you respect in the cage. And but if you don't have that, and a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, because they don't emphasize submissions, don't have that.
Yeah.
Nothing about them is scary.
Because they don't have the great takedown, and so they can't get it there, and then, you know, even when they get it there, the submission game isn't super high level.
Isn't really powerful. And so they might be incredibly successful in a pure jiu-jitsu format, but in that MMA format, if they can't translate their jiu-jitsu into a way to make the other guy scared, then it's going to be a rough night.
Yeah, for sure.